Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
The Moon Beetle. The Moon Beetle lived in a little moon-shaped house. He had moon-shaped antennae on his head, and his wings were also shaped like tiny moons. But he couldn't fly because his wings were too thin. He was happy just to sit in the grass and look at the shape of the clouds. His little legs were also weak, and so he could neither fly nor walk. But the little spider helped him with everything. The Moon Beetle sat in a moon-shaped armchair with wheels, and they took short walks together. If the Moon Beetle was hungry, little spider pushed him to the table. He tucked the Moon Beetle into bed at night. Little spider never left the Moon Beetle's side, and he always knew exactly what he needed and when. He also knew when he didn't need help. But the moon chair wasn't good for longer journeys. When he went on longer journeys, he always called on his old friend the centipede for help. So that is how they went collecting mushrooms in the forest and enjoyed trips to the puppet show. And that's how they went to pick strawberries in the summer months. The centipede was happy to carry the Moon Beetle on his back. But one summer day, the centipede received a letter.
Look at this,
He said excitedly.
It's from Reggie Squirrel. He's invited me to visit him. I'm leaving tomorrow. What will happen to me?
The Moon Beetle asked in a sad voice. How will I go to Alfonzo's violin concert tomorrow?
Wait, we'll think of something,
the centipede said. If only I could go to the concert on my own without help, the Moon Beetle sighed.
I know what would be good. If you had a chair that you could push yourself in. A rolling chair.
A wheelchair, the Moon Beetle repeated. Yes, that would be really good. The centipede produced a pencil and started to design the contraption. When the design was completed, they both went to see Eddie, the potato beetle. He was very handy and could make anything. Eddie studied the design and then got straight to work. He brought his tools, all the parts, and he drilled and hammered. The wheelchair was ready that same afternoon. Sit in it, try it out, Eddie said, and he helped the Moon Beetle into the chair.
Now try and push it,
the centipede encouraged his friend. The Moon Beetle carefully turned the ring attached to the wheel, and the chair began to move.
Hooray!
Eddie cheered. This will be my legs, the Moon Beetle whispered quietly, and he smiled. The sunbeams gently stroked his weak legs. They practiced until late in the day. The Moon Beetle slowly learned how to direct, speed up, slow down, and stop the chair. The next day, the Moon Beetle made his way to the Cricket's concert all on his own. Take care of yourself, the little spider shouted after him in a worried tone. The others were surprised and all ran to greet him. Hey, you got here on your own? Berry asked, and took a good look at the chair. Yes, all on my own, the Moon Beetle proudly announced, and he told them all about the new contraption. Alfonzo's concert soon began. All the forest friends had come along to hear him play. After the concert, Berry and Dolly walked home with the Moon Beetle. The little spider was sitting in the window waiting for his friend to return, safe and sound.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Gingerbread. December had arrived, and the forest was covered in a thick quilt of snow. Berry and Dolly were sitting chatting in the Ladybird's dotty house. "Let's bake some gingerbread biscuits," Dolly suggested with a bright smile. Berry and Dolly got to work in the kitchen. They bustled around in a cloud of spices and flour and rolled the biscuit dough out flat on the table. Dolly got all the gingerbread cutters out of the drawer. They cut lots of different shapes out and popped the biscuits in the oven to bake. When the biscuits were cooked to a crunchy crisp, Dolly took them out of the oven and put them in a pretty bowl. Then she carefully placed the bowl outside in the snow. "These hot biscuits will soon cool down in the winter chill," she told Berry. Just then a magpie flew over the house. He could smell the delicious gingerbread biscuits, and he swooped down and carried the lot off in his big beak. When Dolly came out later, the bowl and biscuits had completely disappeared. "Oh dear, someone's taken my yummy biscuits," she shrieked. "But who could have taken the bowl?" Berry asked. Berry and Dolly decided to go and search in the forest. The first friend they ran into was Iris the ice beetle. "Oh, Iris, someone has taken my yellow bowl full of fresh gingerbread biscuits. You didn't see who it was, did you?" Dolly asked. "Yes, I did. It was the magpie. He flew off in that direction." They kept walking until they met the grub. "Hello, grub. The magpie took my yellow bowl filled with gingerbread biscuits. Did you see which way he flew?" The grub pointed. Not long after, Berry and Dolly caught sight of Bubble and Eddie, who were building a snowman. "Have you seen the magpie? He took my yellow bowl and all our gingerbread," Dolly complained. "Yes, we saw him. He flew towards the stream," the potato beetle replied. "Look, Dolly, fresh biscuit crumbs. The magpie must have flown this way," Berry suddenly shouted. "If we follow the trail, it should take us to the magpie's nest," Dolly proposed. The pair of them followed the trail of crumbs, and it took them all the way to the magpie's nest and to the sweet smell of gingerbread. Berry and Dolly climbed up the tree and knocked on the magpie's door. "Did you take my yellow bowl filled with fresh gingerbread?" Dolly asked as soon as the magpie opened the door. "Yes, it was me. I was very hungry. I saw the bowl sitting there, so I took it, but I can give it back to you." "It's not nice to take what belongs to somebody else," Dolly said, and marched back to her house in a grumpy mood. Berry did his best to keep up with the little ladybird. "Don't be angry, Dolly. I know that the magpie took your bowl, but he gave it back, and I'm certain that he'll apologise," the little snail said. Berry and Dolly invited their friends over that afternoon. Flutter the butterfly, Balthazar the bee, and Stanley the stag beetle all came around for tea. They all sat at the table and began to eat. It wasn't long after that they heard a soft knock on the front door. Dolly opened the door. The magpie was standing outside and looking very ashamed of himself. "I brought you some rosehip cordial. I made it myself. Please take it as a gift to say how sorry I am for pinching your gingerbread," the magpie said. "Why don't you come in and join us for a bite to eat, magpie? There's plenty of room for you at our table." This made the magpie very happy. The friends sat around the table, munching on delicious gingerbread biscuits and sipping fresh rosehip cordial. They chatted and laughed late into the night.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Berry's picture. One cloudy afternoon, Dolly the ladybird girl took out her brushes and paints. "I'm going to paint a rainbow," she decided. "Good idea," Berry agreed. "And I'm going to paint a bunch of flowers." They both got straight to work. Dolly carefully painted the coloured lines of a rainbow, and Berry worked hard on his bunch of flowers. He painted 3 tulips, a harebell and a daisy. I only need to paint a ribbon and it's done. I have to hurry because Stanley, Balthazar and Bubble are coming over this afternoon. But just then, Dolly knocked a glass over that was standing in the middle of the table, and water poured all over Berry's painting. The lovely, colourful painting began to run and the lines all smudged. Dolly, you ruined my painting. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. It was an accident. But it's still ruined. Berry sulked and stamped out of the door. I'm going home. Berry, wait! Let's try and fix it, Dolly said, sounding rather unsure, but the snail boy didn't even look back. In the meantime, the clouds vanished and the sky cleared. When Berry got home, he put his soaked painting out in the sunshine. His picture very soon dried, but now it was crinkly and blotchy. Berry stared sadly at his painting, and then he gave a big sigh and threw it down on his bed. Balthazar, Stanley and Bubble will be here soon. I need to tidy up. The door soon opened and his little friends appeared. Hi, Berry.
We're here.
And we brought the cards with us too. Come inside. The snail boy invited them in and they sat around the table. Balthazar shuffled the cards, Stanley dealt, and they started to play. Bubble was soon out of the game. He was strolling around the room and he noticed the picture lying on the bed. He picked it up and stared at it in awe. Goodness me, Berry, it's beautiful. Did you paint it? He asked inquisitively. Berry was surprised and stuttered. Yes, I painted it. They all began to question Berry.
Was it your idea? Will you show us how you did it?
Stanley quizzed. How did you make it so beautiful? Asked Balthazar. Berry just shrugged and said, Yes, it was my idea. It's no big deal. I'd love to show you how to make one. Just then, Dolly walked into the house. She was carrying a large plate of cakes and offered it shyly to Berry. I baked these, Berry. I'm sorry that I ruined your picture. The others all stared at Berry in confusion. Mumbled Balthazar. So it wasn't really your idea? It wasn't my idea. It all happened by accident, Berry began. Dolly knocked the water over, the colours all ran and the painting went all wobbly. I put it out in the sun to dry and then I decided to keep it and not throw it away. It's a good job you didn't throw it away. Could I have it? A lovely bunch of flowers like this would look just lovely on a flower beetle's wall. Of course you can have it, Bubble. I'm sorry that I got so cross. I'm not upset with you, Berry. I brought my rainbow painting with me and I'd like you to have it. Thank you, Dolly. I love it. I'm going to put it on the wall. Would you like to join our game? The snail boy asked Dolly. I'd love to. And we can eat cake at the same time, the Ladybird girls said with glee.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Dolly's flower. One spring day, Dolly the ladybird was planting a flower in front of her house when Bubble the flower beetle appeared. Will it grow big? He asked Dolly. Yes, it will grow into a big bush covered in flowers. By the time summer arrived, the bush was covered in flowers. Everybody who passed by took a deep breath of the sweet scent. It's beautiful, said Flutter admiringly, and so did Berry, Balthazar, Stanley and Bubble. By the middle of the summer, the sun was at its hottest. Dolly was busy watering her flower when Christopher the Canary delivered an invitation to her door. It's from Katie. She's invited me to go and visit her. And she sounded very excited.
You go, Dolly, and I'll water your flower.
Thank you, Bubble. I'll be away for 6 days. Please water my flower every day, otherwise it will dry out.
I won't forget, don't worry,
Bubble promised. Bubble dutifully watered the flower the next day and the day after that, both morning and night. He passed Flutter's house on his way home. The butterfly girl was busy painting her roof yellow.
I'd like to paint my house too.
I've got plenty of paint left. You can have some if you like.
Thank you.
He started painting his house first thing the following morning. He was so busy painting that he forgot all about the flower for the next couple of days. He only remembered again when Dolly came home and knocked on his door in floods of tears.
Bubble, my flower's all dried out. Oh, I completely forgot,
the flower beetle exclaimed. The two of them stood next to the wilting plant. They watered it, but it made no difference. The bush's branches drooped sadly down and petals lay scattered on the ground. Rain is the only thing that can help here, Stanley the stag beetle announced. A real summer shower that soaks the soil. Come along and rain again. So the leaves grow big and strong and the branches good and long. Come and rain all night and day. Come and rain so we can play. Come and rain and never stop. But it still did not rain. Bubble really wanted to cheer Dolly up. He thought hard about how he could make things better. Then he suddenly had an idea.
Dear Cloud, sprinkle a little rain on our forest. Dolly's very sad because her flower has dried out.
It's getting late and I'm sleepy. I'll do it tomorrow,
the cloud said drowsily. And with that, the cloud closed its eyes and fell asleep. When Dolly stepped out of her little house, a fat drop of rain plopped into her hand. It's raining! Hurry! It's raining, Berry! It's raining! It rained more and more. Dolly and her friends had never been so happy to see it rain. The bush stretched a little and lifted up its drooping branches. It opened up its flowers once more and drank the rainwater up. Look, it's not drooping its branches anymore. It's grown stronger again, said the ladybird girl.
It's not only grown stronger, it's grown bigger.
Bubble gathered up handfuls of flower petals and flew up to the cloud.
Thank you.
And he sprinkled it all over with the scented petals.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
The missing nuts.
Hello, Berry. Hurry up. Let's go and see Reggie Squirrel. We really should say goodbye to him before he hibernates for winter, Dolly the ladybird said.
Berry put on his hat, scarf and gloves, and the two friends made their way to Reggie Squirrel's home. Their friend the squirrel was sitting on a branch in front of his home.
We wanted to say goodbye before you snuggle up to sleep through the chilly winter.
Why don't you come up for a glass of juice and a quick nut snack? Reggie suggested. Look at all the yummy food I've gathered for winter. My pantry's full.
But the pantry was empty.
Oh my! Where have all my hazelnuts and walnuts gone? Where are my delicious pine cones, acorns and raisins?
I think this might be where the nuts rolled out, Berry said, pointing to a little hole in the corner of the pantry. Someone's been chewing the tree trunk, Dolly said in surprise.
And I think I know who it was, the little snail added.
Don't worry, Reggie. We'll catch the troublemakers and find your nuts.
And don't forget the pine cones and acorns too,
the squirrel added. The two friends headed towards the big meadow. They heard loud laughter as they got closer. I knew it was them. They're always getting into some sort of trouble, Dolly whispered to Berry. I'm sure they're doing something naughty right now, Berry added. Someone chewed a hole in Reggie Squirrel's tree trunk right outside his pantry, and now all of his nuts are missing. It was you lot, wasn't it? But we didn't mean any harm. We were just chewing the bark like we always do, and we didn't know that his pantry was on the other side, the smallest bark beetle explained. What can we do to help? Come with us and we'll find the nuts that rolled away. We haven't got that much time. It could start to snow at any minute. We'll never be able to find his food in the snow, so hurry. They all took a close look at the tree trunk.
The nuts all rolled out here and then they fell to the ground and carried on rolling down the hill,
Reggie explained. The gang of friends found Reggie's goodies in a pile at the bottom of the hill.
Hooray!
Reggie shouted with delight.
Would you please bring all the food back to my home while I patch the hole up in my pantry?
Reggie told the bark beetles. They carefully placed the hazelnuts, walnuts and acorns back in his pantry. Berry and Dolly gave them a hand. They worked as fast as they could, but it got dark very quickly, and they still had a huge stack left at the bottom of the hill. We'll never finish in time, one of the bark beetles sighed. We could really use some extra help, another added. Berry the snail suddenly sprang to his feet and left in a hurry without saying a word. He was soon back and had a trumpet in his hand. He blew it so loudly that everybody could hear it. Soon all the friends in the forest gathered. Dolly climbed up on a big boulder and told them all what had happened to Reggie Squirrel's winter food supply. All the nuts rolled out of the hole. We've got to take the food back to Reggie's home. If you all help, it can be done before dark. Ready, set, go, Berry said, and he lifted a nut from the pile. He gave it to Dolly. She handed it to one of the bark beetles. The bark beetle gave it to the bee handed it to the dragonfly, and so it moved back up the hill to the squirrel's pantry. By the time the moon appeared in the sky, all the hazelnuts, acorns, walnuts and chestnuts were safely stowed away in Reggie Squirrel's winter home. Reggie happily put the last nut back in his packed pantry.
Thank you. I'm so glad I've got so many good friends. It's time for me to tuck myself up in bed before it starts snowing. See you again in spring.
The grateful squirrel yawned.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
The bicycle. One summer day, a pigeon delivered a parcel to Berry and Dolly. It was quite a big parcel and wrapped in pretty red paper and tied with a blue ribbon. Dolly read the note attached. It's from the centipede! Hooray! He's coming to visit us soon, and he sent us this present. To us? Berry asked. What do you mean? To me or you? It says in the letter that it's for us. It's a present for both of us, I suppose. That's silly, Berry argued. I'm sure it's meant to be for me, because I was the one who found him in the snow last Christmas. But he stayed at my house. I looked after him and made him tea, Dolly replied. But I read him caterpillar stories from the storybook, Berry added. The red wrapping paper wasn't that strong, and it soon tore open. Wheels poked out from underneath. It's a bicycle, Berry exclaimed. It's just perfect for me. No, it's just perfect for me, Dolly insisted. All right, you can have the bicycle if you want it so much. I'll be the bigger person. You're behaving like a silly baby. That upset Berry. That's not fair. I'm going to be the bigger person and you're the silly baby. You can have the bicycle. In the end, neither of them took the bicycle. They walked away and left the half-unwrapped bicycle in the meadow. Not long after that, Balthazar the bee and Flutter the butterfly came by.
What do you think it is? Is it a bicycle?
Balthazar asked. Yes, it looks like it, Flutter replied. There's a note stuck to it. It's for Berry and Dolly from the centipede.
Let's take it to them,
Balthazar suggested. They touched the bicycle and the rest of the wrapping paper fell off. This made them laugh. Look, it's a tandem. 2 people can ride it.
Let's have a go,
Balthazar said. Hello, Berry. Hello, Dolly. We brought you your bike. You left it in the meadow, Flutter shouted. Berry and Dolly came outside. They saw Flutter and Balthazar on the bicycle and felt very silly.
Oh, it's a tandem. We can both sit on it.
And we had such a fight about it. They made friends again and hugged each other happily.
What a super present. We wasted all our time quarrelling and we haven't made anything for the centipede. He could arrive at any minute.
Let's make him a colourful windmill. We can use pretty petals, Flutter suggested. Yes, that's a great idea, Berry and Dolly agreed. The 4 friends gathered red, purple, white, yellow and pink petals and made a windmill. Just then, the centipede arrived in a cart pulled by a mouse. The little mouse stopped in the meadow and the centipede climbed out. He gave Berry and Dolly a big hug.
I see you got my present. I hope you like it.
It's beautiful. We love it, Berry and Dolly said. And we made you this windmill. The centipede stayed with Berry and Dolly for 10 whole days. They went for long rides on their bicycle. They played a lot. They had a very good time, but the happy days passed soon.
I have to go home now. I've had such a super time here.
Do come and visit us again next summer, Berry and Dolly said, as they waved goodbye to their friend.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Sunflowers. Berry and Dolly planted sunflower seeds in the spring and watered the seeds until little shoots soon appeared. The shoots grew into little plants that grew into big plants. Then buds appeared that opened into lovely yellow flowers in the summer. Hooray! The friends cheered when they saw the lovely flowers. Berry noticed that the flowers pointed one way in the morning and another in the afternoon.
Look, Dolly, they're turning their heads.
That's because they always turn to face the sun. That's why they're called sunflowers. When the sun went down, the sunflowers hung their heads and went to sleep. All the forest friends were woken the next morning by shouts of panic. Oh dear, what's happened? Our lovely sunflowers, Dolly cried. Who could have done such a terrible thing? Berry wept. Someone has chewed through the stems of our sunflowers. Flutter washed their wounds with fresh dew, and Dolly bandaged them all with soft blades of grass. The sunflowers slowly started to smile again. The friends all gathered in Balthazar's house to decide what to do next. What are we going to do? Berry sobbed. Someone needs to stand guard at night. I'll go first, said Dolly bravely. The little ladybird hid quietly behind the bush and kept a close eye on the sunflowers. She didn't have to wait for very long. A hamster soon appeared and started to chew at the stems of the sunflowers. Dolly jumped out from her hiding place and shouted, "Shoo!"
This surprised the hamster and he ran away. He didn't come back again that night. Flutter guarded the sunflowers the next night, and then Balthazar, and then Stanley. Soon it was Berry's turn. The little snail hid quietly behind the bush and waited. He waited and waited until he eventually fell asleep. He wasn't even woken by the sound of the hamster chewing at the sunflower stems.
Oh dear, I must have fallen asleep. I didn't guard the sunflowers.
Berry sobbed when he saw the sadly sagging sunflowers the following morning.
Berry fell asleep. He slept while the hamster chewed the stems again.
Why do you all look so sad? Asked Dr. Owl. Dolly told him what had happened to the sunflowers. I think you should talk to the hamster. Ask him not to hurt the sunflowers, Dr. Owl suggested.
There he is. He's asleep in the bush.
Berry whispered to the others. The noise woke the sleeping hamster. The hamster looked scared of the friends and the friends felt frightened of the hamster.
There's no need to be scared of us. We just wanted to ask you not to chew our sunflowers. But then what will I eat?
The hamster told them.
We'll bring you plenty of apples and carrots to nibble on. Where do you live?
The little snail asked.
I haven't got a house of my own,
The hamster said sadly.
You haven't got a house?
Balthazar repeated in surprise.
Then we'll build you one.
Dolly brought apples, Berry brought seeds, Flutter brought raisins, Balthazar brought dandelion leaves, and Stanley brought carrots.
My new house is really super.
The hamster said with a cheery smile.
And thank you so much for all the yummy food.
The hamster never chewed the sunflower stems again, and they smiled happily at Berry and Dolly and all their friends for the rest of the summer.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
The Yellow Ladybird. The spring had come at last. Dolly decided it was time to tidy up her flower garden. She got her spade and a rake and tied a pretty dotted scarf around her head. She had only just stepped outside when she heard someone groaning behind her house. "Christopher, your wing looks broken," the little ladybird exclaimed.
The sun shone in my eyes and I flew straight into a tree. I really hurt myself,
the canary said. Just then, Berry the snail and Stanley the stag beetle arrived. "Stanley, please go and get Dr. Owl. Christopher's wing's broken," Dolly said, taking control. Dr. Owl soon arrived. It looks like a very bad break," he said seriously. Then carefully and slowly he bandaged Christopher's broken wing.
You know, Dolly, Christopher said one day, there's a little ladybird living on the island I come from.
"Really? Is she red with black dots like me?" Dolly asked excitedly. "And what's her name?"
She's called Katie. Her back isn't red, it's yellow, but her dots are black like yours. She looks a lot like you. Why don't you come to meet her when my wing's better?
That sounds like a super idea. Can Berry come too?
Of course he can. There's enough room for both of you on my back.
A few days later, Dr. Owl came to visit the injured canary. He was happy to say that Christopher's wing was as good as new. The canary thanked the owl for his help, put Berry and Dolly on his back, and headed for his island home. They soon found themselves flying over a large lake with a little island in the middle of the water.
Can you see it? We're flying to that island. My nest is on top of the highest tree. Hold on tight. We're coming in to land.
Christopher landed perfectly, and Berry and Dolly climbed down. "You can't catch me!" shouted a bright beetle in an orange dress. She was talking to the tiny fleas running after her. "Watch out!" Dolly shouted, but the girl beetle ran right into her. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to knock you over. My name's Katie. Who are you?" "Oh, you're Katie. We're here to see you. My name's Dolly, and I've come a long way to meet my ladybird cousin." "Ladybird cousin?" Katie asked with a puzzled smile. "Yes, you've got black dots just like me, except you're yellow instead of red." "Wow, you're right," the yellow ladybird said. "Come with me and I'll show you my house," Katie said. As soon as they saw Katie's house, Berry and Dolly started to laugh. "My house looks exactly like this, but mine's red." Berry, Dolly and Katie took a long walk around the island. "There's the pine forest with the little stream running next to it. We built the bridge ourselves," Katie explained with pride. "And what's that in the middle of the meadow? It looks like a slide." "That's right. It's a special flower slide. Come with me. I'll show you." "Can I have a go?" "Of course you can. Follow me," Katie said and slid down on the curvy slide. Berry, Dolly and Katie slid down the slide again and again until it started to get dark. "It's getting late. Come on, you two, I'll take you home," Christopher said. Dolly and Katie swapped headscarves as a parting present. "Have a safe trip home," Katie told them. "Do visit me again sometime." It was getting very late by the time Christopher arrived at Dolly's dotty house. The moon shone and the sky was full of sparkling stars.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Friends. It was a super sunny day and Dolly the ladybird sat staring out of the window. "I'm going to eat breakfast," she thought, "and then I'll go for a walk in the meadow." She decided to take her wheelbarrow with her. "I wonder if I'll find something interesting to take home in my wheelbarrow," she thought to herself. "Goodness me," said Dolly. "What a lovely red cherry. That's just perfect for my lunch." She tried to lift the cherry into her wheelbarrow, but it was far too heavy. Too heavy for one little ladybird. Just then, Berry the snail appeared. "Why the sad face, ladybird?" asked Berry. "I can't lift this cherry into my wheelbarrow," Dolly replied. "Don't cry, I'll help you," Berry said with a smile. And the two of them picked the cherry up with no trouble at all. Dolly set straight off home with the juicy cherry. Now it was Berry who looked sad. "Don't you want to share the cherry with me?" the snail said, and stamped his little foot. "I did help you." "But I found it first," Dolly snapped. "You're not having any. It's mine." Berry was very upset. The two of them started to fight over the cherry. "It's mine! It's mine!" shouted Dolly. "That's not fair!" Berry shouted back. They pushed and pulled the cherry until it split in two. Berry and Dolly plopped to the ground. They were very surprised when a green grub crawled out of the cherry.
"What have you done to my cherry?"
he grumbled.
"That cherry was my home." "Oh, don't look so upset,"
the grub said.
"I know where we can find plenty more." You can eat cherries while I find a new home for myself.
Dolly helped the grub into her wheelbarrow, and they all set off to look for the cherry tree. When they arrived, they found the ground around the cherry tree was covered in ripe red fruit. Berry and Dolly jumped for joy. The grub fell fast asleep, while Berry and Dolly munched away on fresh cherries, and the time soon flew by. It was getting late, so they decided to go home, but this time with 2 cherries. One for Dolly and one for Berry. The sun was setting by the time they reached Berry's house. They took his cherry out of the wheelbarrow and said goodbye. Berry went inside and waved to Dolly from the window. Berry soon fell fast asleep after such an exciting day. The little snail dreamt about playing in cherries with Dolly and eating until their tummies were full. Then Dolly got back home and went straight to bed. From that day on, Berry and Dolly were the best of friends.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
The Puppet Show. One sunny summer morning, Berry knocked hard on Dolly's door.
It's the puppet show today. Let's go and tell Flutter and Eddie too.
Berry and Dolly's first stop was at the pretty butterfly's house.
Wake up, Flutter. The fleas are going to give a puppet show. It's Snow White.
The little friends stopped in front of the potato beetle's house.
Eddie, are you coming to see the puppet show?
But Eddie didn't open his door.
Hurry up, Eddie. We're going to be late,
Berry shouted, but there was still no answer. Flutter gently turned the handle and popped her head inside.
Are you still in your pyjamas, Eddie?
Berry grumbled.
Hurry up and get dressed.
I'm not going. My tummy's covered in nasty bites. It really itches,
Eddie sobbed.
Let me have a look,
Dolly told him.
They're not bites. You've got chicken pox,
the ladybird girl told her sickly friend.
There's no need to be scared. I've had them already, and I had thousands of spots. I'll go and get Dr. Owl,
Dolly announced.
He'll know what to do.
Dr. Owl soon arrived and took a good look at Eddie.
It's definitely chickenpox. Chickenpox is contagious, Eddie. I'm afraid you won't be able to go to the puppet show. Contagious? Does that mean Berry, Dolly and Flutter are going to catch my chickenpox? No, don't worry. You can only catch chickenpox once, and they all had it last year. You mustn't scratch your spots.
There'll be another puppet show,
Berry reassured him.
Don't be sad. You'll get better soon,
Dolly smiled. Berry, Dolly and Flutter said goodbye to the little potato beetle and hurried off to see the puppet show. The puppet show was already set up in the meadow, and the puppeteers were 5 fleas. The curtains soon opened, and the puppet show began. They all watched the rest of the puppet show and clapped loudly at the end. The flea puppeteers came out from behind the tent and took a bow.
It's such a shame that Eddie couldn't come with us, Dolly said with a sad smile. I'm sure he'd have really liked it. Why don't we put a puppet show on for him? Dolly suddenly suggested. That's a super idea, Dolly, Flutter said. And the three friends were soon all hard at work. Flutter drew dwarves, Dolly drew Snow White and the Prince, and Berry drew the Wicked Queen. Then they cut their drawings out and glued them onto sticks. When they were ready, they all crept under Eddie's window and tapped on the glass. The little potato beetle opened the window and looked out.
Let the puppet show begin,
Berry announced, and the three friends started the show.
Thank you, he said. You're the best friends a beetle could have.
Dr. Owl came back 10 days later, and all Eddie's spots had gone. Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Spring Sports Day. Berry, Dolly, Flutter and Balthazar were sitting by the lake, throwing pebbles into the water. Berry hit a floating log a couple of times, and his friends clapped.
Come down to the meadow now. The Spring Sports Day is about to start,
Stanley told them all. Their forest friends had already gathered in the meadow. The little beetles all put their running shorts on and stood in line. They all ran as fast as they could. They had to run 3 times around the meadow.
It's not fair. Eddie cheated. He cut the corner.
Leapy the grasshopper shouted.
There's to be no cheating. Let's start the competition again, but no cheating.
Stanley came first, Leapy came second, and Balthazar came third. Berry finished last. Balthazar and Eddie started whispering.
He's as slow as his snail.
Don't make fun of him. It's not nice,
Dolly said angrily.
Now it's time for the high jump. The one who can pick the highest apple is the winner,
Alfonzo said. The friends took a run and tried to jump as high as possible. Leapy got the highest apple, Flutter got the second one, and Eddie the potato beetle grabbed the third apple. No matter how hard Berry tried, he couldn't even reach the lowest apple.
I can't do it. I just can't do it,
he sulked.
Come on, Berry. You'll be better at the next race. Don't be sad,
Rosita said. But Berry was too nervous to join the rolling race because he was frightened he'd crack his shell. The others all lined up and rolled from one end of the meadow to the other. Dolly was the fastest and she won.
Now let's start flying, Alfonzo said. The fastest to fly to the top of this tree and get a pine cone from there is the winner.
The beetles started immediately. Flutter, Balthazar, Dolly and Zephyr all joined the race. Flutter was the fastest and got to the top of the tree first.
I can't fly either,
Berry snivelled.
Don't be so angry, Berry. It's time for the skipping competition now. The fastest skipper wins.
The 4 contestants started skipping. But suddenly, Berry got tangled in the rope and hurt himself. The others were worried and ran over to him.
I'm not doing any more silly races. I can't do anything. I'm going home. We have to think of something. We have to cheer Berry up,
Dolly said.
You're right. What's he really good at?
Rosita asked.
I know,
Flutter shouted. Throwing!
That's a super idea,
Balthazar agreed.
Berry was the only one who could hit the log in the lake.
They made 5 piles. The first one was made out of apples, the second of horse chestnuts, the third of pine cones, the fourth out of hazelnuts, and the 5th one out of pears. Dolly convinced Berry to come back to the meadow.
It's time for the throwing competition. Do you want to join in?
Rosita asked.
Hooray! Throwing? Of course I'm in.
Everybody had a go, but Berry was the best. He was the only one who managed to knock over all 5 piles.
You see, Berry, I'm the best runner, Leapy's the best high jumper, Flutter's the best at flying, Dolly at rolling, Rosita can skip the fastest, and you're the best thrower. Everybody's good at something,
Stanley explained. Berry got a beautiful shiny chestnut engraved by Alfonzo, which said, throwing, first place. Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today? The kite. Berry the snail was still asleep when Dolly the ladybird knocked on his window.
Good morning, Berry. Let's make a kite.
Dolly drew a kite and Berry cut it out. They decorated it with colourful ribbons and then they tied it to a long piece of string.
Let's see if it flies,
Dolly said. They took each other's hand and set off to fly their kite. But no matter how hard the two of them tried, the kite just wouldn't fly.
I'll climb up this tree and try it from there. Maybe then it'll fly,
Dolly explained. But the kite just fell to the ground again. All of a sudden, the wind blew up and carried the kite away and took Dolly with it.
Berry! Help!
Berry climbed up the tree and grabbed Dolly's feet, but he couldn't pull her back, so now the two of them were flying. Balthazar the bee flew by. He caught hold of Berry's feet, but he couldn't pull the kite back either, so now the 3 of them were flying. Eddie the potato beetle was sitting on top of a pine tree. He caught Balthazar's feet, so now the 4 of them were flying.
Leapy! Help!
Balthazar cried to the grasshopper, who was just hopping by. Leapy caught Eddie's feet, so now the 5 of them were flying. The wind got stronger and stronger. Flutter the butterfly flew by. She caught Leapy's feet, so now the 6 of them were flying. Stanley the stag beetle and Zephyr the dragonfly looked at their friends in despair.
Oh dear, the wind's blowing us right into the forest.
The kite got tangled in the top of a tall tree, and they landed in the treetops. The wind died down, and the sun came out. Berry gave the ladybird a worried look.
Dolly, I can't fly.
How am I going to get down from here? Don't worry, Berry. I'm sure we'll think of something.
I know what to do. Jump into this blanket, Berry. Don't be afraid. You won't hurt yourself.
Berry jumped down into the blanket and bounced back up in the air. Look at me! This is fun! We want to try! The others shouted. The little friends jumped up and down on the blanket until it got dark. Long after they were all in bed asleep, the wind blew up again and carried the kite far, far away.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Harry Hedgehog's birthday. One summer morning, Berry the snail, Dolly the ladybird and their forest friends were playing in the meadow. They were taking turns on the leaf swing. It must be so much fun to play on that swing, and it's a shame I'm too heavy for it, Harry Hedgehog sighed. His friends didn't know what to say. It's Harry Hedgehog's 10th birthday next week, the ladybird said. He'll be 10 years old, the little snail nodded. What do you think he'd like for his birthday?
I know.
Balthazar exclaimed and jumped to his feet.
A swing!
That's a super idea. Let's make a big swing for Harry, Dolly said enthusiastically. The little friends got to work immediately. They brought a saw, a hammer, nails and screws and searched for some strong branches. They tied the swing to thick wooden poles with very strong string. When the swing was ready, they all went to Balthazar's house to bake a cake. They cracked eggs and stirred the butter. The mixer whirred away and wooden spoons clattered in bowls. The little bee's kitchen was soon filled with delicious smells. They decorated the cake all over with cherries, raisins and walnuts. Let's put candles on it, Flutter said. Yes, 10 candles, Dolly nodded.
Let's write a letter to Harry, Berry said. Dear Harry, please come to Balthazar's house at lunchtime. We'll all see you there. Can you take it to Harry, please? Berry asked.
But don't say a word about the cake and the swing, Dolly shouted after him. Balthazar and Stanley put the cake on a round table and carried it out of the house. The little ants were playing hide and seek, and suddenly the smallest ant ran right into the table.
You tipped the table over! The cake's ruined!
Balthazar moaned. The cake! What are we going to do now? Dolly sobbed. Harry Hedgehog will be here any minute and he won't have a cake. The little ants felt very sorry for what they'd done, but one of them had an idea. Let's gather lots of fruit and berries and build a big pile. It'll be almost like a cake, won't it?
That's a good idea, Stanley said. I know Harry loves fruit.
Berry, Dolly, Balthazar, Stanley and the little ants began to gather fruit in the forest. Eddie the potato beetle, Zephyr the dragonfly and Rosita the rose beetle helped them too. They soon had a very big pile indeed. Stanley stuck 10 candles on top of the fruit, just seconds before Bubble arrived with Harry Hedgehog. Happy birthday, Harry! They all shouted. Wow, look at all that delicious fruit, my favourite. Thank you very much, the hedgehog exclaimed. We've got a surprise for you, Dolly said, and they led Harry to the swing. Harry was very surprised. What a big swing! Can I use it? He asked cheerfully.
Yes, we built it for you.
Hooray! Now I can swing too! Thank you so much!
Then they stood around the fruit pile and began to eat. They ate and ate until nearly all the fruit was gone. They stuck the leftover apples and pears on Harry's spikes, and he took them home to his mossy house. Harry went to bed with a happy smile and looked forward to tomorrow, when he'd swing with his friends again.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today? Pebbles. One sunny summer afternoon, Dolly decided to cook a strawberry cake. She asked Stanley the stag beetle and Balthazar the bee to go and collect wild strawberries in the forest. The two boys set off. Balthazar soon spotted a pebble in the middle of the path, and he started to kick it along. But Stanley also liked the look of the pebble, and he tackled it off Balthazar.
That's not fair, Stanley. I found it. I want to kick it down the path.
It's my pebble now. Find another pebble to kick.
But I found it, so it's mine.
Balthazar moaned. There are loads of pebbles. Find another one, Stanley said, trying to close the argument. But Balthazar wouldn't leave it at that. He pushed Stanley out of the way so that he could kick the pebble. The two of them continued to push and shove until they both tumbled down the hill into the babbling brook. Alfonzo the cricket came out of his house to see what all the noise was about. What's going on? He asked.
It's all Stanley's fault. He took my pebble.
It wasn't your pebble. I was just a better kicker.
That's enough of that,
Alfonzo interrupted.
Come inside, get dry, and then tell me all about what started this silly argument.
The two boys muttered to themselves as they followed the cricket into his little house. They hung their wet clothes out in the hot sun and sat wrapped in towels while they waited for them to dry. Alfonzo gave them both a glass of lemonade and a biscuit. The sun's warm rays soon dried the clothes. Stanley and Balthazar munched sulkily on their biscuits. They told Alfonzo all about what had happened and how they had rolled down the hill into the brook.
I've got a whole collection of pebbles.
Pebbles? Can we have a look?
Balthazar enthused.
Of course,
Alfonzo said with a proud smile, and he placed a large box on the table. Where did you find all these lovely pebbles? Stanley asked.
Down by the brook. You can collect some too if you like.
They filled their baskets with pebbles. They sat sorting them and organising them until it started to get dark. The little stag beetle and the bee boy said goodbye to their cricket friend and started to walk back up the hill. They soon came to Dolly's house. The little ladybird girl shouted angrily out of the window. Where are the strawberries?
Oh dear.
There's strawberries.
We forgot the strawberries.
Dolly, look at the lovely pebbles we collected with Alfonzo.
What am I supposed to do with them? Make pebble cakes? I asked for strawberries.
But we forgot,
Stanley admitted, and he told her the whole long story. Well, I see. Let me have a look at those pebbles, if you didn't bring any strawberries. We should paint something on them. This one looks just like a little house. And this one, I might paint a smiley face on it.
That's a super idea. We can invite the others and spend all day painting pebbles.
Great.
The next morning, Berry the little snail boy arrived at Dolly's house with Flutter the butterfly, Zephyr the dragonfly, Leapy the grasshopper, Eddie the potato beetle and Bubble the baby beetle. Where are Stanley and Balthazar? Berry asked with a disappointed sigh. Here we are, the stag beetle and the bee boy announced, and they proudly presented Dolly with a big basket of strawberries. Oh, thank you, the little ladybird girl said, and she mixed the cake while the others got to work painting the pebbles. When they had finished, they invited Alfonzo to come and see their exhibition.
They all look really good. I'll bring my pebbles tomorrow and we can paint them too,
the cricket told his friends.
When the strawberry cake was ready, they all sat around the table and ate every last crumb. Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Christmas. It was a crisp winter day, and Berry the snail and Dolly the ladybird went into the woods to look for a bunch of Christmas greenery.
Look, Berry, this little tree got knocked over in the storm. Let's take it home. We can decorate it for Christmas.
Hooray! We'll have a real Christmas tree, Berry shouted. They lifted the tree up and saw a centipede sheltering under its branches.
Help me, Berry. Let's put him on the sledge. He's hurt himself and looks very cold. We can take him to my house.
They lifted the centipede carefully onto the sledge. Will he be all right? Berry worried.
Of course he will,
Dolly reassured her friend. When they got home, they put the poorly centipede to bed. Dolly made him hot tea, and Berry read him caterpillar stories from a storybook. Next morning, the centipede opened his eyes and smiled a little smile. He got better every day, and soon he was healthy again. Dolly asked him to stay.
You're so nice. Don't go, centipede. Spend Christmas with us.
Well, thank you. I'd love to stay.
But what should we get him for Christmas?
Dolly wondered.
What would make a centipede happy?
Dolly told him her idea. The little snail nodded excitedly. Berry and Dolly went to see the ants. The queen ant welcomed them with open arms. Dolly told them what kind of present she'd thought of.
We can make anything you want,
said the queen. Christmas came, and Berry and Dolly made a tree stand. As night fell, Berry gave Dolly her present.
Merry Christmas, Dolly.
Thank you, Berry, the ladybird said. She was delighted.
It's beautiful.
Dolly was very happy and wound the pretty ribbon around the tree.
Merry Christmas to you too,
Dolly said, and handed Berry his present.
Sparklers, super. Let's put them on the tree.
They lit the sparklers, and crackling sparks danced around the Christmas tree. The glittering light attracted lots of tiny fireflies, and each brought a Christmas decoration. Even the centipede helped to trim the tree. Soon the ants arrived carrying a parcel. They handed it to Berry and Dolly.
This is our present to you, centipede, Berry said to him. Merry Christmas.
Boots!
He shouted happily.
They'll keep your little feet warm when you're walking in the snow,
Dolly explained. The friends' celebrations went on late into the night. There was Eddie the potato beetle, Stanley the stag beetle, Alfonzo the cricket, and Rosita the rose beetle. The fireflies built a big snowman with the little ants. They all sang and danced around the Christmas tree. Flutter the butterfly came to celebrate with them. Zephyr the dragonfly danced with Leapy the grasshopper. Berry and Dolly skipped around with Balthazar the bee. When the party was over, the centipede cleaned his boots and put them on a shelf.
What a wonderful day I've had. It's a shame that Christmas only comes once a year.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
The Carnival. Winter was nearly over, and the forest friends were sitting in Dolly's house. It's time we started getting ready for the carnival, Flutter the butterfly said. What are you going to dress up as? Berry asked. It's a secret, Flutter answered. You have to keep your costume a secret so that we can surprise each other at the carnival.
You're right. Let's go home and get started. We've only got a few days left,
Balthazar said. Berry quickly made up his mind. He decided to dress up as a mushroom. He used a white sheet for a cape and made a hat out of a red bowl. He painted white dots on the bowl. Dolly made a flower costume. She cut leaves out of green paper and sewed them on a green blanket. That was her dress, and she made petals out of purple paper. Balthazar the bee and Betty the bumblebee worked together. Balthazar dressed up as a devil and Betty dressed up as an angel. Bubble the baby beetle sat in his hammock and started to make his lion costume. The lights were on in every home in the forest on the night before the carnival. Everybody was working on their costume and busy preparing for the celebrations the following day. Then the big day arrived. The forest friends decided to have the carnival at Stanley's house. They all worked hard and decorated the stag beetle's home with coloured streamers and balloons. While this was going on, Rosita the rose beetle was busy making delicious cakes at her house. Dolly, Leapy and Eddie the potato beetle all lent a hand. Then the time came for them all to put their costumes on. Stanley dressed up as a dice and waited for his friends. The first to arrive were Berry and Dolly. He was dressed as a mushroom and she was dressed as a flower. Then Balthazar came as a little devil and Betty as an angel, with Flutter in a crab costume. Leapy looked just like a cactus. Bubble was dressed as a lion, Eddie was a chef, and Rosita was a bunch of grapes. Her dress was covered in shiny balloons. The firefly was dressed as a pencil, and the flea was an octopus. Sam came as a soldier, and one of the little ants was dressed up as a pancake. Suddenly, Zephyr the dragonfly burst in crying, "It's gone! My beautiful princess dress has disappeared! I washed it and I hung it out to dry, but the wind blew it away!" Zephyr sobbed, and the others tried to comfort her. "I don't need my soldier hat, I've got a sword," Sam Snail suggested. "No, that's for boys. I had a lovely princess dress, but the wind blew it away."
"We'll make you a new costume," Leapy said. "A sun costume."
Zephyr liked this idea very much. "This yellow curtain will make a great cape," Dolly shouted.
"And these yellow pieces of paper can be the sun's rays," Stanley said, and took some of the streamers down. They cut, glued, sewed and stitched, and the beautiful sun costume was ready in no time.
I can lend you my little lantern. A pencil doesn't really need a lantern,
laughed the firefly.
"Thank you,"
Zephyr said. She was so happy she blushed. The forest friends danced and sung all night and agreed Zephyr had the most special costume of all. As what could be more special than a sun that shone at night?
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today? Easter eggs. Easter had arrived at last. Flutter the butterfly girl, Rosita the rose beetle, Leapy the grasshopper girl and Zephyr the dragonfly all gathered together at Dolly's house to paint eggs for Easter. How many eggs do we have to paint? Rosita asked. Now let's see, Berry is certain to come and visit tomorrow, but so is Balthazar, Stanley, Eddie, Bubble, Alfonzo and Sam Snail. That means we need to paint 7 eggs each. We better get started. Oh, they look so pretty. I'm sure that the boys will love them, Flutter told the others. It's time to go home. I've got to get up early tomorrow to make pancakes for the boys, Flutter said. I'm going to bake scones, Rosita said. And I'm going to make an apple strudel, Dolly added. All the girls got up bright and early the next morning. Flutter hurried into the kitchen, put on her apron and mixed up a big batch of pancake batter. Rosita popped her apron on and started to knead her scone dough. Dolly rolled her pastry out and Zephyr made a sponge roll. Leapy woke up feeling quite excited.
Boys never get up early. I've still got plenty of time to bake an apple pie.
And she put a big basket of apples on the table. Oh dear. The basket of apples tipped over and knocked her pretty painted Easter eggs onto the floor. They were all ruined.
Oh, my eggs! Now what am I going to do? What will I give to my visitors?
The little grasshopper girl sobbed as she ran to Dolly's house.
Dolly, I've smashed all 7 of my eggs! Help me!
I haven't got time, Leapy. I'm busy baking. But I've still got 2 unpainted eggs. If you paint them quickly, they'll be dry by the time the boys come.
Rosita! All my eggs got smashed. Can you help?
I'm too busy baking, but you can have these 3 white eggs. You've still got time to paint them if you hurry.
Flutter! Help! I've got to paint my eggs all over again. The first lot got broken.
All of them? I am sorry, but I can't help now. My pancakes will burn. You can have these 2 unpainted eggs I've got left over.
Something terrible has happened, Zephyr. I've broken all the eggs I painted yesterday. Please help me, because I haven't got time to paint another 7 eggs.
Leapy complained to her dragonfly friend. I know who can help you. Come with me. The 2 friends ran through the forest all the way to a cave. The spider stumbled sleepily from his home. Oh, can you help us, Spider? Zephyr asked. Leapy's eggs all got broken. And now she has to paint new ones and there's not much time left. The boys will be coming to visit her soon.
If I have to,
the spider grumbled.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Leapy got out all her paints and brushes and the 2 of them started to paint the eggs. The spider could paint 3 eggs at once.
We're ready,
Leapy said with a happy laugh. And then she thanked the spider for his help and she arranged the pretty eggs in a dish. There soon came a knock at Leapy's front door. She opened the door and was greeted by all 7 boys at once. Happy Easter, Leapy! They had all come to see Leapy, who offered them a dish, and they all chose a pretty Easter egg.
I haven't got any cakes to offer you, I'm afraid,
Leapy said in a whisper, and then she told them all about what had happened. Don't worry about that, the boys laughed. We ate strudel at Dolly's house, scones at Rosita's house, pancakes at Flutter's house, and sponge roll at Zephyr's house. Our tummies are full. Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today? The scooter. One spring morning, Morris the Maybug decided to make himself a scooter. He spent the whole day sawing, drilling and hammering, and when he was finished he painted the scooter black. Then he hurried to show his super scooter to his friends. The boys were all playing basketball in the meadow. Berry, Stanley, Balthazar, Eddie, Bubble and Alfonzo. Look at my new scooter. I made it all myself.
Can I have a try?
No one can borrow it. It's mine.
I only want to try it for a minute.
We'd like to have a go on it too, then we'll give it back. I'm not lending it to anyone, Morris told them again. The boys were so busy arguing that they didn't spot Eddie, who grabbed the scooter and rode off on it. Stop! Bring it back! It's my scooter and I didn't lend it to you. I'm not lending it to anyone. Eddie slowed down and Morris soon caught up with him. Give me my scooter back.
Here you are. It doesn't go fast enough anyway.
Not fast enough? Look at this. Not fast enough? You can hardly keep up with me, he shouted with a laugh, but he didn't see a big pothole in the middle of the road.
Watch out, Morris!
Balthazar, Berry and Stanley all shouted at once, but it was too late.
Well, you've only got yourself to blame, Morris,
Balthazar said in a snooty tone. What happened, Morris? Are you badly scratched? Why aren't you boys helping him? The Rose Beetle asked the others.
It's all Morris's fault.
It doesn't matter how it happened. He's really hurt himself and you should have helped. Come back to my house, Morris, and I'll clean those nasty scratches for you. Rosita sat Morris down and washed his wounds with a warm, wet cloth. It doesn't look that bad now. Morris started to sob. It was all my fault because I was mean to the others. If I hadn't been so mean, it wouldn't have happened. Then don't be mean next time. Thank you for all your help, Morris said as he left. It was nothing. You'll feel better soon. Morris limped all the way back to his house. The minute he got home, he jumped into bed and he was soon fast asleep. The little Maybug woke up the next morning with a wonderful idea. He got out his paints and brushes. I'm going to paint you pink. Look at you. I've brought this for you. Thank you for helping me yesterday. It looks lovely. Did you paint it? Rosita asked. Yes, I thought you wouldn't like it black. I love it. I'm going to ride it over to Dolly's house. Be careful. Have a safe ride. Morris walked home and he was about to eat his lunch when he heard a knock at the door.
Hello, Morris,
Balthazar said first.
we came to see if you were feeling better.
Much better, thank you, Morris shrugged. I promise that I won't take your scooter again, Eddie said with an apologetic smile. I haven't got it anymore. I painted it pink and gave it to Rosita. But I can make a new scooter, Morris said. I promised Rosita that I won't be mean again. Everyone can have a go on my new scooter when it's finished. Hooray! Bubbles shouted. Now would you all like a piece of apple pie? I baked it myself. Morris soon finished the new scooter. He painted it dark green. All the friends gathered in the meadow the next day and took turns to have a go on the two scooters. Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Alfonzo's Fiddle. One autumn day, Alfonzo the cricket stood happily playing his fiddle in the mushroom field. The forest friends were all enjoying the lovely music. The little ants were playing football on the hill. But oh dear, the ball bounced away and knocked the fiddle clean out of Alfonzo's hands. Alfonzo shouted in horror.
My fiddle! My fiddle's broken!
And then he burst into tears. He was sobbing so loudly that everyone came to see what the fuss was all about. Alfonzo pointed angrily at the spotty ball.
That ball is to blame, and those naughty ants. Where am I going to get a fiddle from now?
He picked his broken fiddle up, went into his house and slammed the door shut behind him. Alfonzo, come out. I'm sure we can help you, Berry pleaded. But Alfonzo didn't want to see anybody.
His friends sat sadly in the mushroom field and didn't know what to do. Then Dolly had an idea.
I know. Let's make Alfonzo a new fiddle. Yes, let's make a new fiddle. Flutter the butterfly nodded. I know who can help us. We have to find Charlie the click beetle. He made Alfonso's first fiddle. The band of friends set off and walked until they reached a blue house. They knocked on the door. A tiny, timid beetle popped his head out. He wore a blue hat and had beautiful dark blue wings.
Who are you?
He asked. Dolly told Charlie the whole story.
Oh, don't be sad. If that's your problem, I'm happy to help. Alfonzo will be playing music on his new fiddle in no time at all.
The click beetle gave everybody a job to do. Some collected wood for the body of the fiddle, while others gathered grass for the strings. Now he had everything he needed. Charlie got to work. He sawed, sanded, polished and waxed. And then, like a little miracle, the new fiddle was ready.
Can I try it?
Dolly asked.
No, it's Alfonso's instrument,
Flutter told her.
but I want to have my own musical instrument.
Dolly sulked.
Me too,
The little ants shouted.
Quiet,
said Charlie.
Why don't you all start an orchestra? A great big orchestra. Like a music band? And everybody could have their own instrument?
That's a very good idea.
The first thing they made was a harp for Dolly. Stanley the stag beetle got a double bass, and Eddie the potato beetle had a cello. Berry made a trumpet out of a lily. Morris the maybug made a horn from a honeysuckle flower. The big spider used horse chestnuts and acorns for drums, whilst Zephyr and Leapy made cymbals out of pebbles. Charlie carved flutes from birch twigs for the ants. Flutter the butterfly got a lute, and Balthazar the bee got a zither. Bubble the baby beetle played a triangle. They all had a quick practice and then headed for Alfonso's house. Alfonso heard the music and looked out of his window to see where it was coming from. He was surprised by what he saw.
Please, Alfonso,
the little ant began.
Don't be mad at us for breaking your fiddle. We'd like you to have this new one as a present. Charlie made it.
Alfonso began to play straight away, and the sound of his fiddle filled the forest once more. Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today? The hot air balloon. One summer afternoon, a storm blew up in the forest. Dolly the ladybird and Berry the snail sat watching it from the spotty house. The wild wind twisted the trees and blew the roofs off houses. The rain came down in buckets. When the rain and wind finally stopped, the two friends took a look around the forest.
Look, Dolly, the wind blew this tree over,
Berry said.
and the rain washed away my flowers.
Dolly sighed. Leapy the grasshopper came rushing in.
Dolly! Berry! Come quickly! Someone's lying in the meadow!
The friends found an oil beetle lying in the meadow.
Oh, what happened to you? What's your name? Who are you? I'm Adet the oil beetle. I live up in the mountains, but the wind blew me down here and I hit my head really hard. My wings are weak and I can't fly. I don't know how I'm going to get home.
The oil beetle sniffled. They lifted Adette up and carried her into Leapy's house. "Don't worry," Dolly said eventually. "We'll help you get home." That afternoon, Balthazar the bee, Flutter the butterfly and Stanley the stag beetle all came to see Adette. They tried to think of ways to help her get home.
"The best thing would be a hot air balloon,"
Stanley said.
But what could we use to make a balloon?
Berry asked.
We could use blankets, pillows and sheets,
Flutter suggested.
"And curtains and towels too,"
Stanley added. They got to work immediately. They stitched all the blankets, curtains, sheets and towels together. It took a while to get everything finished, but Adette helped as much as she could. Every day she was feeling stronger, and even her head had stopped hurting.
"It's ready,"
said Stanley.
"Thank you,"
the oil beetle replied happily.
"Hooray! We're flying!"
Berry exclaimed.
"Wow, it's beautiful! We can see the whole forest from here!"
Dolly laughed. It started to get dark. When they eventually arrived, Adette cried out,
"Hooray! I'm home! Thank you. Please stay the night and watch the shooting stars with me." "We'd love to,"
the little friends said. Adette quickly made them something to eat and gave them delicious cakes and tea. After dinner, they all sat down in front of Adette's house and waited for shooting stars to appear in the night sky.
"Hooray! I saw a shooting star!"
Berry exclaimed excitedly.
"Me too,"
Dolly said.
"And me,"
added Stanley. They went into Adette's house when it got colder and sat and watched the stars through the window. They all made a wish and fell fast asleep. As she slowly drifted to sleep, Adette wished that someday she would meet her new friends again. Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today? The rainbow. It was a rainy summer day. Dolly the ladybird and Berry the snail sat sadly underneath a giant leaf. Then the sun came out and the sky was blue again. But the shower didn't stop, and soon a colourful rainbow stretched across the sky.
"It's beautiful!"
they shouted. Berry thought it would be a good idea to climb up the rainbow and slide down on the other side. But his first try didn't work. "I think I'll try from the other side," he said.
"Trust me, you can't climb a rainbow,"
Dolly said to the excited snail. But then Berry came up with a new plan. "I'll use a ladder."
"Oh, Berry, I don't think it's a good idea,"
Dolly said anxiously. Dolly was right, and Berry was angry. Dolly tried to distract her friend.
"Come and play something else."
But Berry still didn't give up.
"Look, Dolly, I'm sure I can jump on top of it from here."
But that idea didn't work either. Dolly ran over to Berry.
"Are you all right?"
"I'm fine," Berry sulked. Berry was very sad, and Dolly tried everything to cheer him up. I got you some flowers, she said kindly, but Berry couldn't be comforted. Then the rain dried up and the rainbow disappeared. They walked home hand in hand, and Dolly said nice things to the little snail. Chin up, Berry. It's your birthday the day after tomorrow, and I'm sure you'll get some super presents. Dolly had a great idea when she got home. I'll make a rainbow slide for Berry's birthday, she said to herself. Then his dream can come true and he can slide down a rainbow. Balthazar the bee and Flutter the butterfly helped her. Balthazar, Dolly and Flutter painted the slide with colourful paint, wrapped it in yellow paper and tied it up with a blue ribbon. The three friends even baked a cake for Berry. When the time came, Balthazar and Flutter took Berry to Dolly's house, where everything was ready for the birthday party.
Let's give him his presents,
yelled Balthazar, and Dolly gave Berry the chocolate cake. A real rainbow! A rainbow slide! Can I try the slide? Sure you can, Dolly replied. Berry liked the rainbow slide very much. He slid on it again and again. Flutter and Balthazar were so happy they started to dance. You know, Dolly, said Berry, it really is a nice present. Thank you. Lots of friends joined in the birthday celebrations. There was Leapy the grasshopper, Eddie the potato beetle, Zephyr the dragonfly, and even Stanley the stag beetle came. The little snail let everybody try his new slide. Berry, Dolly and their friends played on the slide until it got dark. Berry went to bed very happy that day. What a wonderful birthday I've had, he sighed with a smile.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Kindergarten. One autumn morning, Dolly knocked excitedly on Berry's door. Come quickly, Berry, or we'll be late. Berry got ready and the two friends held hands and walked to the nursery together. Lots of little children were gathered in the playground. They were all so happy to see each other. There was Balthazar the bee, Flutter the butterfly, Stanley the stag beetle, Eddie the potato beetle, Zephyr the dragonfly, Alfonzo the cricket, Leapy the grasshopper, and Bubble the baby beetle. Mrs. Bumblebee patiently guided everybody into their classrooms. The little, middle and top children went into different rooms. Bubble was in the little group. He waved to Berry and Dolly from the doorway. The day started with exercises. After breakfast, the children made beautiful pictures using the leaves they collected in the woods. When everybody had finished, Mrs. Bumblebee gathered the children in a circle. She taught them lots of songs and games. The children all danced around. Then it was playtime. Mrs. Bumblebee sat in a rocking chair and watched the children. Berry and the boys ran straight over to the car box and started playing cars. They built ramps and tunnels. Can I join in, boys? Dolly asked. She was holding a broken red car. Oh no, Dolly, you can't play cars with that old thing, Berry told her. And anyway, cars are for boys, not girls. That made Dolly cry. The boys don't want to play with me, she told Flutter. Flutter, Leapy and Zephyr quickly cheered her up. Come and play with us. We're playing with dolls. The girls dressed their dolls in pretty dresses, fed them and rocked them to sleep. Dolly liked this game a lot. Then Berry got into an argument with Morris the Maybug. You keep knocking my car over. It's not fair. You're a cheat. That's not true. You're a cheat, replied Morris. That's it. I'm not playing with you anymore, Berry said sulkily and left the boys. Can I join in your game? Berry asked his friend Dolly. You can't play with us. It's a girls' game, Dolly sulked. But I brought this doll with me. It's got curly hair. I want to play with you. All right. Come and play with us. But now you have to let me play cars with you.
Children, time to wash your hands, Mrs. Bumblebee shouted. Then go and sit down at the tables. Mrs. Earwig, the dinner lady, dished up their dinner. When everybody had finished eating, Berry and Dolly collected up all the plates and glasses. Then the children had a little lie down while Mrs. Bumblebee read them a story. They all listened in silence, and a few of them fell fast asleep. When they got up, they all had a snack and went out into the playground. It was enormous and filled with all kinds of slides, climbing frames and swings, with a big wooden train in the middle. Berry and Morris quickly made friends again and played on the swings together. Dolly helped Bubble up the slide and caught him at the bottom. Bubble liked that a lot. The rest of the day flew by, and soon the children were waving goodbye to each other. They couldn't wait for tomorrow to come.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Little kids and big kids. There were 2 football pitches next to the kindergarten. The little kids played next to the pine tree. Bubble the baby beetle was the captain, the little bark beetle was goalie, and the ant boys made up the rest of the team. The big kids played in the shade of the oak tree. Stanley the stag beetle, Balthazar the bumblebee, Eddie the potato beetle, and Berry the snail boy. The little kids played with a spotty rubber ball. The big kids had a proper football. One autumn day, Balthazar picked up the little kid's ball and he started to do tricks with it.
Look at this,
He teased.
Give it back, it's ours.
Bubble whined.
I only want to show you how high I can kick it.
Boasted Balthazar, and he gave the rubber ball a mighty kick. He kicked it so hard that the ball burst. Now there's only one ball left. The little kids can have it in the morning and the big kids can play with it in the afternoon, the kindergarten teacher decreed. The big kids kept taking the ball from the little kids. And the little kids would steal it from the big kids. They were constantly quarrelling. Why don't you play together? Dolly asked the boys.
Together? Never. The little kids are weedy and clumsy,
yelled Stanley the stag beetle.
And the big kids are horrid and pushy,
the little ant boy shouted back.
Stop being so silly. Play a match instead. Little kids versus big kids.
How can 4 little kids win against 4 big kids?
The bark beetle complained. All right then, Leapy and I will join in with the little kids. Then there'll be 6 of us against 4 big kids. How about that? The ladybird girl asked. Super, they all agreed. They started to play. They had so much fun that they hardly noticed the time fly by. In the end, thanks to a tricky goal from Bubble, the little kids won the match 5-4.
Same again tomorrow.
Balthazar said to Bubble the baby beetle.
We can play a rematch.
The next day they played the rematch. This time the big kids beat Bubbles' team 4-3. The little kids aren't so clumsy after all, Stanley grumbled, and the 2 captains shook hands. A new boy came to kindergarten the day after that. The little flea brought his own stripy ball and he let the little kids play with it. This meant that Bubbles' team went back to the pine tree and the big kids stayed on the larger pitch. They sometimes played together after that, but they did not count the goals.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today? Dumplings. One autumn day, Dolly the ladybird cooked plum dumplings and invited her friends to lunch. Berry came along, and so did Balthazar, Stanley and Flutter. The little ladybird girl put 3 dumplings on each plate. Berry, Dolly and Flutter were soon full.
Plum dumplings. I love them. I could eat 5,
said Balthazar the bee. 5 is nothing. I could eat 7.
7? I could eat 8.
I could eat 10, the little stag beetle announced.
Then let's have a competition,
Balthazar concluded.
Let's see who can eat the most dumplings.
Dolly didn't like the sound of this, and she tried to talk them out of it, but the boys were determined. It'll all end in tears, she warned, but Balthazar and Stanley wouldn't listen. We've already eaten 3 dumplings. Now let's eat the 4th, Stanley suggested, and he plopped another dumpling onto each plate. When they had finished, they put another on their plates and ate a 5th dumpling each. After the 5th, they ate a 6th. After the 6th, they ate a 7th. After the 7th, they ate an 8th. And then a 9th dumpling.
And now for the 10th. Can you keep going?
Balthazar asked. I could eat twice as many, Stanley said with a shrug. The 2 friends ate so many dumplings that their tummies started to hurt more and more. I'll run and get Dr. Owl, shouted Flutter the butterfly. Dr. Owl examined them both and gave them a good telling off. What have you 2 been doing? I'm not surprised that you've got stomachache.
They ate 15 each, Berry said as he counted the plum stones on the plates.
And so it was a draw after all. It was a very silly thing to do. You'll only be allowed to eat boiled potatoes for 3 days. But the chimney cake man's coming to the forest tomorrow, Stanley complained. I'm very sorry, but there's going to be no chimney cake for you. Come and see me in 3 days and I'll take a look at your tummies again, Dr. Owl said with a scowl, and he flew away home. The very next day, The firebug arrived in the meadow with his delicious chimney cakes. All the forest friends flocked to the stall to sample his tasty wares.
I'd like a cinnamon one,
Dolly said. And I'd like a coconut one, Berry added.
I only want sugar on mine,
Flutter shouted. But there were also cakes with walnuts, poppy seeds and chocolate on them. Balthazar and Stanley looked sadly on, but they did as Dr. Owl had told them. On the third day, the little bee and his stag beetle friend went to see Dr. Owl.
Now let's take a look at you,
said the elderly owl, as he examined them both thoroughly.
You appear to be better. I can see that you did as you were told.
We did, Stanley said with a sob, but I so wanted to eat a chimney cake. Stanley and Balthazar said goodbye to Dr. Owl and were walking home when the old bird shouted after them.
Wait 1 second. I've got something for you here. I saved 2 chimney cakes for you.
You went to the meadow, Dr. Owl?
Of course. I bought chimney cakes for my chicks and I put 2 away for you. You did exactly as I said, and so I thought you deserved a treat. Thank you,
the 2 friends said with a smile, and they both threw their arms around Dr. Owl. Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Blueberries. One sunny autumn day, Berry and Dolly went into the forest to pick blueberries. Their friends Flutter the butterfly and Eddie the potato beetle went with them.
I'm going to pick the most blueberries,
Eddie announced.
Look, this bush is full of ripe blueberries,
the little snail said.
I'm going to pick them all.
But Eddie jumped in front of Berry and quickly picked the biggest berries. This bush is full of berries too, Dolly told the others. But the little potato beetle was faster again. By the time Dolly got to the bush, he'd already picked the best of the berries. Eddie, that's not fair. Don't pick all the berries, the little ladybird complained. Then the friends came to a stream. Let's build a bridge over the stream. I know exactly how. Let's all go and bring that big log here. They all had to work hard to pull the heavy log over the stream. The little friends made a super bridge together. It's done, Flutter sighed. Look, there's another blueberry bush with lots of berries on it. That was Eddie's cue.
I'm going to get there first. Those blueberries are all mine,
he shouted triumphantly. But he pushed past Flutter so hard that she slipped and fell into the stream. Help! Don't worry, Flutter. Hold on to me, Dolly shouted and stretched her hand out to the floundering butterfly. But the water flowed too fast and Flutter couldn't reach Dolly. Berry picked up a long stick.
Grab the stick, Flutter,
he shouted. But this didn't work either because the river started to carry the little butterfly away. Eddie, help! We've got to pull poor Flutter out of the water, Dolly yelled, and they pulled the soggy butterfly out of the stream. Oh my, I'm so cold. I'm very, very cold. And my little wings are soaked through. Here, take my jumper. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry, Flutter. That's very nice of you. But you'll catch a cold too without your jumper. We should collect a large pile of leaves and wrap Flutter up in them. Berry, Dolly and Eddie gathered a big bunch of burdock leaves and covered the shivering butterfly with them. I'm still very cold and my wings don't work. Look, they're all wet and ruined. Flutter started to sob. The sun took pity on the weeping butterfly and came down close to warm her wings. Flutter Flutter's wings were soon beautifully dry and as good as new.
Hooray! I'm all dry and warm at last. Thank you, sun,
Flutter said with a smile.
I'm so sorry, Flutter,
Eddie said.
I promise I won't pick all the blueberries next time. I want you to have all the ones that I've picked. Thank you, Eddie. Why don't we share them instead? Let's hurry home and bake a blueberry pie.
The friends all walked back to Flutter's house and got to work straight away. They picked all the leaves off and gave the blueberries a good wash. Spoons stirred and pans clattered until the kitchen was filled with the sweet smell of delicious blueberry pie. The yummy dessert was soon ready. Stanley the stag beetle, Balthazar the bee, and Bubble the baby beetle came along to join the feast. The forest friends all sat around the table and chatted late into the night. Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Fairy cards. Flutter the butterfly girl had a favourite card game. There were 16 cards in total, with pictures of pretty fairies in yellow, dark blue, pink, green, orange, red, purple, and light blue dresses. No two cards were alike. The girls played with their fairy memory cards all the time. Stanley the stag beetle thought of a horrid joke to play. I could scribble on all the cards, he thought naughtily to himself, but he didn't dare do it. And so he tried to talk Balthazar into ruining the pretty cards. Balthazar, wouldn't it be funny to scribble all over Flutter's cards? The silly bumblebee gave a sneaky snigger and started to scribble on the cards with a dark green felt-tip pen. He drew moustaches, devil's horns, forks, and a devil's tail on the pictures of the pretty fairies. The butterfly girl saw her cards that afternoon and screamed in horror. What happened to my lovely cards? She asked in a panicky voice, and Flutter began to sob. What a horrid thing to do! Who could have done such a thing? Dolly asked, sounding terribly shocked.
I know who did it. Balthazar's the only one with a dark green pen,
Zephyr said in an angry tone.
and I saw a green mark on his hand.
Did you do this? Berry asked gruffly.
That's not how it happened.
Then how did it happen?
It's all Stanley's fault. It was his idea.
But I didn't scribble all over the cards.
Flutter sobbed and Reggie Squirrel gave her a comforting cuddle.
The one who thought it up is naughty and the one who did it,
Reggie Squirrel snapped strictly.
You're both naughty.
That was a really stupid joke, boys. Just imagine if we burst your football,
Zephyr added.
How sad would that make you feel?
You're right,
Stanley admitted.
Flutter, we'll take your cards and see if we can get the scribbles off them. OK?
OK,
sniffed the butterfly girl. Stanley and Balthazar strolled sadly home and got straight to work trying to fix the cards they had scribbled all over. But the harder they tried, the more mess they made. The rubber made a hole in the paper and holes appeared all over the place.
Berry, help! We couldn't rub the scribbles off and we've made a hole with all the rubbing. That's because you can't rub felt-tip pen out. Let's go and ask Dolly for help.
Dolly, help! We can't fix the cards.
I'm not going to help you. It was all your idea, so you have to put it right.
Don't be so unfair. Please help, because Stanley and Balthazar really do want to make things better again.
OK, come on in. The three boys sat down at the table.
They can't be fixed.
The boys just sat and looked sad. We have to think of something else, and I've already got an idea. Let's make new cards. Dolly placed pieces of white card on the table and took out her felt-tip pens. The boys cut the cards out and Dolly tried to copy the fairy pictures. Then Balthazar and Stanley carefully coloured the drawings in. All 8 fairies were soon ready, and of course, there were 2 of each.
You draw so nicely, Dolly.
Now give them to Flutter and say that you're sorry.
Flutter, look! We've made you a whole new set of cards.
Dolly drew them and we coloured them in.
Please be friends with us again.
Flutter flicked through all the cards and a smile spread across her face.
Thank you,
she said and invited the boys into the house. They were soon joined by Berry, Dolly and Zephyr, and the friends played until late with the new pack of cards. And they were all the best of friends once again.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
The robot. One autumn morning, Frank the longhorn beetle visited his old friend Stanley. The stag beetle was really pleased to see his faraway friend. "I've brought you something," Frank said secretively, and put a little box into Stanley's hand. The stag beetle opened the package with excitement. It was a silver-coloured robot. "I built it for you. It can walk, make funny noises, and has flashing lights." Stanley was delighted with the present.
Thank you, Frank. I'll take special care of it.
The longhorn beetle stayed with the stag beetle for 3 days. They talked a lot, played football, ate nice food, and went for long walks together. At the end of the 3rd day, Frank said goodbye to Stanley and went on his way. The stag beetle suddenly felt lonely. But he wasn't alone for long because Berry the snail boy soon knocked on the door. "Hi, Stanley. Do you want to play button football?"
Of course, we can go in a minute, but let me show you something first,
Stanley said. Then he stood on a chair and took the robot down from a bookshelf. But the chair wobbled underneath him and the little figure slipped out of his hand and fell into a million pieces.
Oh, my robot! My robot's broken!
Stanley cried. "Let's try and put it back together again," Berry suggested.
Okay.
Stanley sulked. The 2 boys struggled for a long time, but there was no way they could put all the pieces back together again. "Let's call Eddie. He can fix anything," Berry suggested, and the 2 friends hurried off. They even forgot to close the door. They soon arrived at Eddie's house.
Hi, Eddie. Please help. Frank gave me a robot, but I dropped it and it fell to pieces. I'm sure you can put it together again.
The stag beetle pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I'm too busy at the minute. I promised Leapy that I would mend her bicycle. But I'll go over to your house and help tomorrow, okay?" the potato beetle said.
Only tomorrow? Okay then, come over tomorrow.
The stag beetle snivelled. Berry and Stanley said a sad goodbye to the potato beetle and set off home again. While they were away, Berry the baby beetle was walking past Stanley's house. He was surprised to see the door wide open and walked in. He noticed the broken robot on the floor, and so he sat down and started to patiently put it all back together again. The stag beetle stepped sadly back into his house. But when he saw the robot, his bad mood evaporated. The robot was walking again, beeping and flashing its lights as if nothing had happened.
Hi, Bubble. How did you end up here? And what happened to my broken robot?
I was walking past and came in because the door was open. I saw the pieces of the robot on the floor and fixed it,
the baby beetle answered proudly. Stanley was so delighted that he picked Bubble up and threw him into the air 3 times.
Hooray! You're very clever, Bubble. Thank you.
The next day, Stanley invited Dolly over to show her the robot. Soon, Eddie appeared as he had promised. But he did not need to fix it because now it was better than new. Stanley didn't put the robot back on the shelf after that, so it couldn't fall off again. Instead, he placed it carefully on a little cupboard next to his bed.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today? The football match. One morning, Stanley was woken by the sound of someone knocking on his door. Stanley, it's me, Frank. The little stag beetle crawled out of his bed and saw Frank the longhorn beetle.
Hello there, Frank. It's super to see you.
Stanley said, and the old pals hugged. I brought this for you.
A football, hooray!
We'll need teams to play a proper game, Frank reminded him.
Then we'll tell the others to come and we'll have proper teams,
the stag beetle suggested. The two boys called on all the others to come and play football with them. They visited every house, and by the time they had reached the edge of the forest, they had 2 teams. Alfonzo agreed to be the referee.
We should sew them football shirts,
Rosita suggested.
One team can play in blue and one team can play in red.
The footballers spent the whole week training.
We sewed these for you,
Zephyr told them, and she handed the red and blue shirts to Stanley.
Thank you,
the 2 teams said together, and they slipped on their new football shirts. Dolly and Rosita set benches up, and the spectators all sat at the side of the pitch. Alfonzo blew his referee's whistle, and the match began.
That's it, run, Bubble,
Stanley yelled.
Here, pass it to me,
Bubble shouted.
Hooray!
The blue team cheered as they all embraced.
Come on, Reds! Come on, Blues!
The crowd cheered.
That's not fair, Frank. You can't touch the ball with your hand,
the b-boy complained.
Balthazar's right. Don't do it again, Frank. It's against the rules,
the referee said. The match got very exciting. The Blues were leading 3-2 when the game stopped again.
Frank tripped me up,
Bubble complained.
Yes, I saw that too, Alfonzo agreed. I'll have to send you off if you break the rules again, Frank.
Stanley's team looked set to win. Frank started to get crosser and crosser.
I'm going to score a goal now,
he shouted, and he pushed Berry so hard that they ended up falling over and Frank shouted out in pain.
Ouch! My arm!
The others all ran over.
I'll run and fetch Dr. Owl,
Zephyr announced.
If you hadn't hurt yourself so badly, I'd send you off,
Alfonzo said.
Yes, I know,
Frank said sadly,
but my hand really hurts.
Dr. Owl was soon at the scene.
Well, you've broken your arm. I'll have to put it in plaster, and you'll have to keep it on for 4 weeks. You'll need to look after it and no running around.
The blue team won the football match.
We'll have to wait a while before we can play again,
Stanley said, and he patted Frank on the back.
Don't be sad. You'll soon be as fit as a fiddle again.
I'm sorry that I broke the rules,
Frank sniffed.
I promised to play fairly when my arm has mended, and we can have another good game of football. I think we should all decorate Frank's plaster cast,
Dolly said with a grin.
Let's go back to my house for a snack.
The big crowd of friends all piled into Dolly's spotty house. They got her crayons out and drew all kinds of funny things on the longhorn beetle's plaster.
I'm going to keep it as a souvenir after Dr. Owl takes it off,
Frank told them all. Then all the friends sat around the table and ate every last piece of the delicious sponge roll. Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Sea adventure. One summer day, Berry the snail and Dolly the ladybird found a colourful storybook. It was packed with pretty pictures of the sea swimming with fish and crabs. And there was another strange animal that Berry had never seen. It's called an octopus, but I've never seen a real one either.
Why don't we go to the sea?
Berry asked excitedly. But we don't know where the sea is, Berry.
I know, let's ask Dr. Owl. He knows everything. Do you know how to get to the sea, Dr. Owl?
You need to build a boat and sail down the stream. The stream will take you to the river, and the river flows right into the sea.
Berry and Dolly thanked Dr. Owl for his advice and got to work right away. The 3 owl chicks happily helped them build their boat. The 2 friends jumped in, and the stream carried them all the way to the sea.
Hooray! We're going to see the sea.
The wind blew their boat down the stream and then the river. It wasn't long before the vast blue sea was right in front of them.
We're here!
Yelled Berry. He pulled the boat to the shore and tied it to a palm tree.
Come on, Dolly. Let's dive to the bottom of the sea.
The 2 friends saw all kinds of incredible creatures under the sea. They spotted a big crab and followed it to the surface.
Excuse me, can you tell us where we can find a real octopus?
Asked Dolly.
Hold on to my pincers, and I'll show you the little island where the octopus likes to sunbathe.
The crab helped them to the island and swam away. The octopus was much bigger than they'd imagined, and it frightened them. Berry and Dolly hid behind a big rock. Then the octopus had a good idea. It picked up some pebbles and started to juggle them with its 8 tentacles. The little ladybird and the snail crept out from behind the rock.
Come over here,
The octopus said.
I'll show you the prettiest pebbles on my island.
Berry and Dolly quickly made friends with the octopus, and they all had so much fun.
It's time for us to go,
Said Dolly.
Goodbye. It was very nice to meet you.
Bye-bye,
Replied the octopus, and gave them both a shiny pebble each. Berry and Dolly got into the boat and tried to paddle away, but it was too hard.
Oh dear, Berry, we won't be able to manage. We'll have to get out of the boat.
Dolly was really scared.
See, Berry, I told you we shouldn't have sailed so far from home.
I think you're right, Dolly. But then the stone started to move.
Why are you so sad, little snail?
The stone asked. This made Berry laugh. It wasn't a stone after all. It was a turtle.
My friends, the rainbow fish, are about to begin their long journey. They'll swim up the stream all the way to the source. I'm sure they'd be happy to take you with them.
Berry and Dolly said goodbye to the turtle and sat on the back of the captain fish. Then they all set off on their way home. By the time it was getting dark, the fish had reached the clearing where the ladybird's spotty house stood. Berry and Dolly thanked the fish for their help, and they swam away.
See, Dolly, all's well that ends well,
The little snail said wisely.